Hi there you, nice to see you, thanks for coming along for a Speedy read, and today I've got a very exciting book. I've never read this, but I like the look of it. Yeah, it's called Daddy Lost His Head. And it's by two people called Bouchard and Quentin Blake. And I think this is going to be a good book. I saw it in the library, it piqued my interest. So let's have a Speedy read, stop the jibber jabber, and find out what happened when Daddy lost his head. Speedy read, let's go! Daddy had lost his head. It was plain to see that there was nothing on his shoulders. He kept bumping into things all over the house. When he broke a very old, ugly, expensive china ornament that Mum loved, we had to ask him to stay sitting down. Even without ears, he could still hear us. Once he was finally settled in his chair, he stayed there. It was as if he had been unplugged. We took the opportunity to go and look for his head. First of all, Mum glanced quickly into every room in the house. Then she looked again, this time more carefully. Finally, she even searched in places she knew Dad's head could not have been. In the end, she had to admit we couldn't find it. It was embarrassing not knowing where to look when we were talking to Dad. How were we going to explain to people that he had lost his head and we couldn't find it? Mum started to cry. She could imagine people saying, "Look at this careless woman who can't even find her own husband's head. What can she be like with her children's socks?" So my brother and I decided to make a head for Dad so that people wouldn't say things like that and make Mum cry. Oh, poor Mum. Making a head for your dad is easy, especially if he doesn't look like a film star. First, you get lots of old newspapers and roll them up into a ball the size of his head. Next, you paint it the colour of his skin. When that's dry, you draw on the eyes, eyelashes and mouth. Make the nose out of a potato. If your dad's nose is bigger than that, you could always use part of a cauliflower. Paint the nose the same colour as the skin, but add a bit more red. Finally, if you have a dad who still has hair, all you need is some wool and some glue, and then that's it, you've done it. Dad's head was finally ready. It was even better than the original. It looked completely real, so much so that Mum said, "Brilliant, you found it." When we gave it a tap with a hammer to show her it was only paper, she fainted. On Monday morning, Dad had to go to work. He jumped into the driving seat of the car, and Mum only just had time to get in beside him to help him steer. She left him at the entrance of his office, and he went in on his own, probably through force of habit. You have to admit, there were several advantages to Dad having lost his head. For instance, he didn't make an awful fuss if he did something really stupid. He always agreed with Mum and did all kinds of things for her. As he didn't have a brain to think for himself, she gave the orders and he obeyed. It was really useful for Mum. Dad was delighted to do the cooking, loved laying the table, adored doing the washing up, and made a great job of the hoovering. When he got tired, Mum filled him up with mince and mashed potatoes. Well, I guess that's the only way to do it, isn't it? Through a funnel into his neck. We didn't look forward to bedtime though, because after Mum, it was Dad's turn to give us a kiss. It was horrible because the paper scratched, and if you were stupid enough to kiss him back, the paint came off in your mouth. Yuck. But what was really brilliant for Mum was having a husband who didn't snore in bed anymore. Dad kept lots of his old habits though. Things that grown-ups just did automatically. For instance, one morning we had to repaint his face just as he was setting off to the office because he tried to shave it off. Another time he went jogging and forgot his head. Quick as a flash, Mum was on her bike. Freddie sprinted behind like a greyhound while I stood on the back. It was my job to stick his head back on when we caught up with him. It was lucky we didn't meet anybody in the park that morning because we were a strange sight. All three of us, in pyjamas, chasing a man without a head. We'd nearly reached the other side of the park when we finally stopped Dad. He tripped over a tree root and we fell on top of him. We soon got everything back in order, except that Dad had a rather funny expression, because when I fell over, I squashed his head a bit. Poor Dad. The fact that Dad did whatever he was told gave me and my brother an idea. If we took him to a big department store, then he'd buy us anything we asked him. In no time, we came up with a great way of doing this. Freddie hid under Dad's jacket, fastened in by belt and braces, and imitated Dad's voice speaking through an empty yogurt pot. We had it all worked out. I led Dad around by the hand, and Freddie talked to the salespeople. We got Dad to buy us amazing things. A remote-controlled aeroplane, dolls, computer games, pedal cars, 2 Zorro dressing-up sets, an electric train, a castle, a convertible to take my dolls out in, and terrific space warriors with weapons everywhere, even in their pants. Oh my gosh. While I was choosing a pink private jet so that my dolls could go on holiday, Freddie had fallen for a blue furry mammoth, which was nearly life-size. He was so excited that he forgot to imitate Dad's voice and shouted, "That's for me!" Once we got to the till, Dad's hand took his wallet out of his jacket pocket and his credit card out of his wallet, and then, thanks to the super brilliant force of habit, he tapped his pin into the machine. Apart from a bit of trouble getting the mammoth into our car, it was a complete success. Another time, Mum arrived in the lounge in an evening dress and with so much makeup on that she looked as if she was painted like Dad. She wanted Dad to waltz with her, so he got up, took her in his arms, and they started to dance. To begin with, she was very happy to be dancing with Dad, but after a minute or two she started complaining that he was going too fast. Soon, she was yelling at him to stop. So he did. Mum staggered about in all directions before she sat down, complaining that she had an awful headache. Dad was perfectly happy. He didn't have a headache. Well, he wouldn't, would he? And then, one day, Daddy came back with his real head. It turned out that he had left it at the office because he needed all of his brain to work on a project that was ultra super too important. It's a good word. Dad seemed to have no memory of the time he had spent without his head, and we didn't tell him about it. We were happy because we had been missing Dad's real head, especially since it contained his special recipe for chocolate cake and all the stories that he told in a deep voice at bedtime. When night fell, it was lovely for us to hear Dad's super snoring, capable of penetrating the thickest walls. Mum must have missed it a lot. As for the paper head, who knows where it is now? It's gone in the bin. And that is the end of a book called Daddy Lost His Head by Quentin Blake and Bouchard. And I like that book a lot. I hope you did as well. And imagine, you lost your head. You need some super cool kids to make you a new one. Alright, so I'll see you soon for another Speedy read. I've got to go, so I'm going to go, and I'll see you next time. Alright, bye!